Hi, everyone. Today we are happy to join everyone to speak about the Open Budget Survey regional results. As some of you have seen, that IPP has been very active in country level with our partners in some countries to look into or to work on the results of the Open Budget Survey at the country level. But we're taking this special minute or moment to do some regional reflection on the results of the Open Budget Survey at the region. So what are the key trends? What are the commonalities? What are the success stories? So happy to have everyone in this conversation today. I want to say that we're especially pleased to launch the Open Budget Survey 25 as part of the Open Government Week 2026 celebration, which is also a timely moment to reflect on how transparency, participation, and accountability can help to strengthen the trust between government and citizen, particularly in the time of economic and political uncertainty. We are also delighted today to host to start with some introduction remarks. So we have Patricia, who is our Executive Director at the International Budget Partnership. And this is going to be followed by the other introduction remark by our colleague Pablo Cendoya from the Directorate General for the Middle East and North Africa and Gulf from the European Commission. After this, we will have the presentation of our Open Budget Survey 2025 regional report by my colleague David Robbins, who is the manager of the Open Budget Survey. And then we're going to have a panel in which we are bringing together very inspiring stories, practices from 4 countries in the region: Jordan, Egypt, Morocco, and Palestine. And then we'll end up with the closing remarks also by my colleague David Robbins. Let's save the time, and then I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Patricia for the opening remarks. So Patricia, over to you.
Thank you so much, Emad. Thank you everyone for being here. You'll hear about the statistics and the time series and examples, but I want to start with a simple sentence. We were supposed to be together in person. That is what was supposed to happen. And yet again, we are here with more challenges, more conflict, but we are here. And that's why it makes this webinar even more special. You've seen Emad doing the tours in so many countries. I've asked him if he has cloned himself, but that shows that despite the challenges, the civil society and our partners in government and in other institutions are committed to making sure that progress can happen. And so this is what this day, this morning, this afternoon is about. At the International Budget Partnership, we strongly believe that change has to be locally led, but it also has to be globally connected. And that's why we work across the world with civil society organizations, with government champions, with international institutions to make sure that public money, public resources are spent in a way that is equitable and that it's transparent. Now, this day is also special, as Emad said, because it's been 20 years of the Open Budget Survey, 20 years where IPP has been building a field, working with civil society organizations, showcasing that the budgets are a very powerful tool to get us closer to social change. But it's also a powerful tool of engagement with governments themselves, as our partners have seen, and the examples that we have laid out in the regional report that I invite you to read after this webinar have shown again and again, is that civil society can be that bridge from governments to citizens, that civil society is fundamental to rebuild, to build, to strengthen the social contract. In places where instability happens every day, where governance issues are still a question, engagement with budgets have shown a very important door of making sure that the outcomes, equitable outcomes and development, and the citizens' voice are placed at the center. So today, what you're going to hear pretty much is that progress is possible. In the Open Budget Survey, that progress in the region has been seen in the 3 pillars: in participation, in oversight, and in transparency. But yes, we can celebrate, but we can also make sure to say that this is not enough, that we need to deepen those reforms, that we need to sustain that change, and that we need to go deeper, not only in overall transparency of the budget, but in debt transparency, in tax transparency, in how this translates into real outcomes for real people. What a beautiful webinar this is, as Emad mentioned, from civil society to parliaments, to government officials, to international cooperation, from Palestine and Morocco and Egypt and Jordan, and many, many more partners that are here today. What a fantastic and what a hopeful thing to see today. So with that, and a big thanks to the IBP team, of course. I also want to thank the European Commission, and I'm happy to turn it over to Pablo Cendoya, who's going to give also some remarks from the European Commission. Thank you all so much.
Hello to everyone, and first of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity to provide these opening remarks on this webinar of the Open Budget Survey 2025 for the MENA region. I'm attending this webinar jointly with Guillaume Fin, our Head of Unit Economic Cooperation and Resilience. We're also with Mathilde Serabolo, we are Deputy Head of Unit, and my colleague Xavier Lemonnier. We are all from DG MENA. And let me just first of all maybe say a few words on the recently created DG MENA. As you may know, MENA has been created as a new department in the Commission. So the Commission is the government administration of the EU. And to reaffirm the strategic importance of our relation with North Africa, Middle East, and the Gulf countries, a bit more than a year ago, a dedicated department that is a bit like a ministry at EU level was created for relations with the region. So maybe to come back to the subject that brings us together today, I would say that indeed transparency, participation, and external oversight, and more broadly, institutional strengthening are key priorities for the EU and the MENA region, but also globally. These are areas where we work almost worldwide in our cooperation with partner countries. In this region, it is translated at regional levels with the project that again gathers us together today. So the EU DG MENA is supporting IBP with a 2 million euro grant, and this grant aims to first to support the conduct of the Open Budget Survey. So 2 rounds. We did the 2023, and we're supporting this current round, and also, of course, to strengthen the capacity of CSOs, national CSOs in the region, and for their advocacy efforts for greater transparency and accountability with the respective governments. And so IBP builds a network of civil society actors at regional level, so allowing to exchange experience, creating spaces for political dialogue and transparency, while most importantly increasing national demand for further transparency and participation, which creates an endogenous accountability ecosystem at national level, which is the major objective. Just to say that this action is part of a broader action by the EU in the region. We support, in partnership with our partner countries, PFN and more broadly economics governance reform at regional level through other initiatives, as for example, co-founding the METAC, which is the IMF Technical Assistance Center for the region. We also work quite intensively at bilateral level. This activity must be led by our delegations through a variety of instruments. We have technical cooperation through technical assistance project or trainings that link together financial administration from the MENA countries with their homologue administration in EU member states. And we also cooperate with budget support that is supporting more structural reforms in the area of governance and PFN. So basically, yes, as you all know, but we believe that transparency and accountability is an important issue for several reasons. First, it's a matter of democracy, as we need the executive branch to be accountable to citizens and the legislative branch. So that actually authorize the level and the composition of spending through the budget law, and this accountability requires transparency. We also believe, because it's a matter of effectiveness and efficiency of public action, we need data to conduct evaluation, to see how public policies meet their objectives, and also maybe because the mere act of making information public will already generate more responsible public management practices. So only knowing that the information will be public can transform public management. Also, I would say because transparency is, of course, at the core of social contract, and it is a key element to build trust between citizen and public authorities, therefore to build national cohesion that contribute to stability. And all this is highly needed in a time of growing distrust between national authorities and citizens. And this is quite true globally, not only in the region. Also, we'll say that we live in societies where information is of growing importance, so we need to have reliable and first-hand sources of this information. And indeed, if governments do not provide the information themselves, others may do, and sometimes with possibly negative intentions. So it's important to control your own information. And from this perspective, allow me also to highlight a few points that we believe are important. Maybe the idea that greater transparency can generate immediate gains. It will attract more investment, therefore jobs that are also greatly needed in the region. It will ease public financing and reduce its costs, whether through capital markets or by the international partners. In our case, for example, for the EU, the level of transparency is a central criteria for us providing budget support to state budgets. So it is really an important element. So it is indeed a fully profitable reform for governments to increase transparency and accountability. Also, maybe adding that increasing transparency does not require complex and lengthy structural and maybe institutional or methodological reforms. It's rather a political decision that can have immediate political benefits. So from this perspective, it's a very much interesting area of reform. I would say that to generate its gains, it must meet also a number of conditions. And I would say that it needs to be a genuine effort of transparency, providing a true and complete picture of spending, and not just, not being used mainly for political communication purposes, highlighting some expenditure and no others, the ones that could be the most popular. So it needs to be a genuine image of actual spending. I would say that also in this, ideally, it shouldn't be limited to the executive branch, but also the legislative branch, how it is regarding its management, or also how it reviews the draft budget and the budget settlement laws. Also, it's important that it involves the supranated institution, so ensuring that it publishes the audit evaluation reports with the required timeframes, and so that the reports can inform both public and parliamentary debate. There should be a convergence of interest with what we do in the framework of this project, as they are external control bodies. And I will just add that in the case of the OBS, we are focusing very much on state budget information at its formulation, execution, or control stages. But it could be important to have other needs of other areas where transparency could be also very important. I'm thinking about revenues, the structure of levies and exemptions and tax expenditures, regarding debt, level, costs, creditors, and use, public debt, also on the accounts and transfers by the states to local authorities, public agencies, or SOEs, and on other major expenditures that could be subsidies, notably for energy, that have an important budgetary impact. I would say also transparency is very much needed on public procurement and PPPs at all stages at all stages of the procedure, including the contract awards, to ensure the transparency of the procedures. And also I will mention that maybe from the civil society side, an important issue is that actually CSOs are representative of the communities they represent if we enter in participation processes or in advocating. So there is a need also to real representation from these organizations. And I would say also that I think for us an important aspect is that in the framework of this project of this kind of advocacy, it is important to go beyond experts' debates and trying media actors, so that we have a popular demand for transparency. I would also add that these assessments, and as the OBS is down, requires that is fully indisputable in terms of methodology and the information that is taken in account, so that it keeps its credibility. And let me also add a last point that we think it's important when we develop the action plans also to have the PIFA in mind, that is the PFM evaluation methodology, because it remains a benchmark to which donors and lenders may pay particular attention. And so just in closing, I would like to again commend the work carried out by IBP, which remains quite a unique organization dedicated to these issues of budget transparency and accountability, with independence afforded by its status of civil society organization. I would also really like to thank national authorities, the representative from National Ministry of Finance that are present today, for their openness and willingness to engage in dialogue, and of course the national CSOs that are very much involved in this project. And so thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a fruitful seminar.
Thank you, Pablo. That was very important remarks from Pablo and Ana Patricia. I think now it's time to hear from David on the report itself, how all of these elements highlighted by Pablo and Ana Patricia around transparency, participation, oversight in relation to the executive, the parliament, and Supreme Audit Institute has been captured by our Open Budget Survey 2025 in the MENA region. So because we just need to save more time, I'm gonna just go quickly to ask my colleague David Robbins, who is the manager of the Open Budget Survey, to start the presentation of the report. Over to you, David.
Great, thank you so much, Emad. Thank you, Pablo, for those remarks, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As Emad said, my name is David Robbins, and I manage the Open Budget Survey at IBP. I'm going to walk you through what the 2025 results tell us about budget openness and accountability in the MENA region. To get us started, though, I have a quick survey. Unlike the Open Budget Survey, which has 218 questions, I just have one for you. And that is, where do you think the MENA region has the greatest opportunity for progress in the next 5 years? So you should have seen a little pop-up on your screen within Zoom. The answer options are publishing missing budget documents and information, including on debt, fiscal risk, and public investment, institutionalizing public consultations in the national budget cycle, strengthening the legislature's role in budget approval and budget execution, and finally, improving follow-through on audit findings. Make your selection on where you think the MENA region has the greatest opportunity for progress in the next 5 years. Give you one more moment to respond. I'll ask my colleagues to show us the results. So it looks like we have some good distribution. No real clear winner. Looks like institutionalizing public consultations in the national budget cycle is the leader, followed by publishing missing budget documents and information, which was tied with improving follow through on audit findings. But there was also a good number of you that selected strengthening the legislature's role in budget approval. All items that are very important for this work. The progress has already been made in this region on all of these fronts. So thank you very much. And one more thing before I get into the data. Throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit any questions you have using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And we'll try to get to as many of them as we can after I walk through the findings. So the most recent Arab Barometer asked people across the Arab world what democracy means to them. And about 9 in 10 didn't answer with elections or political parties or constitutions. They answered with things like equality under the law, access to basic services, the absence of corruption. In other words, legitimacy, the kind that actually holds governments and citizens together, is grounded in what governments deliver. And almost everything a government delivers, every health clinic, every school, every road, every subsidy and salary runs through the budget. The budget is where promises become real or they don't. And that's why budget accountability matters, not as a technical exercise or a compliance question, but as one of the most practical answers we have to a much bigger question. How do governments earn and keep the trust of their people? And what the Open Budget Survey 2025 tells us about this region is, I think, genuinely encouraging. Despite the pressures that the region is under, budget accountability is moving, sometimes unevenly, sometimes incrementally, but it is moving forward. And that's where the OBS data points. And we're going to spend the next few minutes showing you what that means for the work ahead. The OBS measures 3 things: transparency, whether governments give the public timely, comprehensive information about how budgets are planned and spent; participation, which is whether civil society and the broader public, including historically excluded groups, have real opportunities to engage at moments that matter; and oversight, whether legislatures and audit institutions have the authority and the practice to scrutinize how budgets are made and how money is spent. For transparency, we have found, as in past rounds, the minimal budget information is made available across the region on average, but that average hides a much more interesting picture underneath. Some countries are clearly making good progress, which is driving consistent improvements on the regional average, albeit it is coming from a low base. Over the past 10 years, the average budget transparency score for comparable countries in this region has improved by 32%. For example, Egypt is now publishing audit reports, financial, compliance, and performance that weren't made available to the public before. Morocco has strengthened its medium-term budget framework, and Jordan continues to lead the region, providing the kind of information that is an enabling condition for real public discussion on the budget. There's a pattern to the gaps too, and that's the same pattern we actually see in almost every region that we survey. Governments are getting better at telling the public what they plan to do, but they're not yet as good as telling the public what they actually did. The information thins out as you move through the budget year, so you can see this dip in the chart on the screen. And that matters because the execution is exactly when promises either get kept or they get quietly broken. Participation is the weakest of the three pillars in this region, and it's also the weakest globally. But, and this is an important point here, we've captured real improvements this round, and it's coming from a few specific places. So Jordan's participation score moved from 4 to 18. Morocco's moved from 15 to 24. Those aren't small jumps. Morocco's e-participation portal is one driver, a structured way for citizens to weigh in on public programs. Jordan's gains are more distributed. Parliament's opened up engagement during budget approval. The executives begun providing space for public input during budget implementation. And the Audit Bureau has opened up engagement on its work. So 3 different institutions, each making room for the public. On oversight, the regional score has rebounded after a low in 2023. The driver is legislative oversight for that increase. In Egypt, parliamentary scrutiny of the budget has gotten stronger. And in Jordan, the Parliamentary Finance Committee published its findings before the budget was adopted. Might seem like a small procedural step, but it's a really strong positive signal because it means legislators are working with information, not in the dark, and they're sharing what they're finding with the public. There's a part of the story that these 3 pillars at a high level don't really capture very well, and that's where we're going to go next. So investment, fiscal risk, debt accountability, these are some of the most important unfinished elements of this agenda in the region. Most countries in the region are publishing some information about debt, disclosing in their budget documents what they plan to borrow and the interest payments they plan on making. But the picture that paints for the public is incomplete in some really important ways. Of the countries that made their draft budgets publicly available, only two include information on the composition of their debt. So who holds it, in what currency, at what maturity. None publish long-term projections on whether public finances are sustainable. The vast majority don't disclose expenditure arrears or contingent liabilities, things like unpaid commitments and loan guarantees that could fall on the public budget if something goes wrong. Across the region, we're seeing large public investment deals, big projects with long time horizons and significant fiscal exposure. These investments themselves are not a problem. Investment is part of how growth happens. It's what we want to attract to our countries. The problem is when those deals happen without the kind of public scrutiny that lets Parliament, lets civil society, lets the average citizen understand the risk that they're being asked to carry. What we call fiscal governance coherence, the idea that transparency, oversight, debt management, public investment all need to hang together as a system. That's really the next frontier for this region. The gains we found on the 3 pillars are real, but they sit as part of a fiscal framework where some of the most consequential decisions are still being made with less light on them. So why does this matter for legitimacy? Because fiscal surprises corrode trust faster than almost anything else. Not just public trust, but investor trust as well. When the government suddenly has to cut services or request emergency funding or restructure debt, the public has no prior context for understanding why. It doesn't look like just bad luck. It looks like bad management or things are being hidden. And the evidence is clear. Greater fiscal transparency is associated with things like improved sovereign credit rating, lower borrowing costs. Trust in both directions is built on the same thing, knowing what's coming. Expanding accountability into the space, debt, investment, liabilities, sustainability. That's where the next progress needs to come from. Much of this, the gains we've documented, what's coming in for the frontier ahead, is being driven by civil society. These gains are concentrated in countries where civil society has remained active, where there are organizations doing the work of translating the budget, taking what is, frankly, a dense and technical document and connecting it to the things people actually care about, whether a clinic functions or if a school gets repaired. That work is the bridge. Without it, even the best budget documents fail to reach their full potential. With it, budgets become a real conversation between governments and the people they serve. And the same goes for oversight. When parliaments and audit institutions engage civil society in their work, budget data becomes something that can be used to track progress against social development plans and social protection commitments over time. But this work is about more than just civil society alone. We see it inside governments too. Egypt's finance ministry has a dedicated unit to engage citizens. Algeria has strengthened how it presents expenditures. Palestine has made the pre-budget statement, the enacted budget, and the citizens' budget available to the public over the past few years. Libya's Audit Bureau has published financial audits. There are reformers in finance ministries, legislatures, and audit offices across this region who are all pushing in the same direction. Progress here is not a story about one country or one government or one international initiative. It's a story about people inside and outside government who believe that the public budget should serve the public. The Open Budget Survey tells us that public budgets in this region are slowly getting more transparent, more participatory, more accountable, and the work ahead is clear. That is to push transparency into the parts of the budget where it still thins out, to build on existing participatory practices and develop new ones as well, to expand accountability into those harder spaces, debt, public investment, fiscal risk, and to keep strengthening the links between governments, oversight institutions, and civil society, because that is really where gains on effectiveness and trust occur. In a region facing challenges, that's also how budget systems become a source of stability rather than volatility. And none of this is possible without civic space. Civil society can only do the bridging work if it has room to operate. Protecting that space and expanding it where it's been narrowed is part of the foundation for everyone else, for everything else. I want to thank the civil society organizations and reformers across the region whose work is the reason that we have a story to even share today. So thanks very much for your attention. We're going to turn, I think we have some time to turn to some questions. We've been watching the Q&A come in, and so we have a few minutes to dig into them, into what's on your mind before we go over to the panel.
Yeah, David, so we have a couple of questions in Arabic. So let me just take the advantage of
Great.
being the Arabic speaker to translate them for you. So a question about how we are following up on the implementation of recommendation after publishing the report. And also a question which I think you have highlighted about the improvement of Morocco transparency score or transparency in terms of publishing documents. I think this question would be also further addressed in the panel.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Emad. Well, in terms of follow-up, the OBS I hope as you all have had a chance to begin looking at the data and results for your country, or if you haven't yet, that you'll go straight there after this webinar. But for every country that the OBS covers, we produce a country summary that is also then translated into the relevant local languages. This summary provides an overview of the findings on budget transparency, public participation, and oversight, as well as a set of recommendations that are drawn from the data and tailored with our research partners for the specific countries. In terms of a follow-up, I think what we often find is that there are some recommendations, some actions that governments or legislatures or supreme audit institutions, there are some actions that they can take that are low or no cost, that are relatively easy, that can see big wins quickly. These are sort of the low-hanging fruits, if you will. There are also some recommendations that we acknowledge that maybe have a longer time horizon, that maybe will take some additional coordination across the public sector to accomplish. And I think we shouldn't be afraid of that. This is work that can really pay dividends, and that also we know isn't going to go away. The budget is something that happens every year. There's a budget this year, and there's going to be a budget next year, and there's going to be a budget the year after. And so the opportunities to make improvements, we can start now. And I think IBP wants to will continue engaging with our local partners, as well as engaging with ministries of finance and legislatures, supreme audit institutions, development partners in the region to help support the those that want to make change in public practice. I think I'll let the Morocco question maybe for the panel. One question that we've gotten is around public participation and the low scores that we see across the region, but also across the world. And so I think there are the OBS's methodology for assessing public participation looks at the opportunities that different institutions offer the public across the budget cycle. And so what we find is that though those scores are low, innovative, meaningful practices exist widely across the globe. But they tend to be concentrated at a specific moment in the budget cycle or with a specific institution. So perhaps the public has the ability to interact with their legislators, but access to Ministry of Finance officials or decision makers within the Supreme Audit Institution are not as accessible. Or they have lots of opportunity during budget approval, but during actual budget implementation or during the audit process, the public is frozen out. And so the low scores are sort of reflective of that we're looking and we're assessing across the budget cycle and across many different institutions. Maybe we'll take one more question. There's a question on how does IBP assess government's responsiveness in the MENA region to the findings and recommendations of the Open Budget Survey compared to other regions in the world. We we do offer, so as part of the process of the Open Budget Survey, we offer governments the opportunity to review the draft questionnaires. So there's a formal place within the OBS process. I will say that across the region and across globally, we do see a variety of responses. The majority of governments do respond and do complete reviews of the questionnaire. And in the MENA region, there are many governments that have completed the review, that are engaged during the research process. IBP takes their comments and we use it to strengthen the questionnaires. So, and we also publish those questionnaires, including the government comments. And so you're able to dig into the questionnaires, see if the government has agreed or disagreed with any particular indicator, and what evidence or change to the indicator, to the answer selected, resulted from the government's review. So Emad, I'm conscious of time, so maybe I'll pass it over to you. So thank you all very, very much. I'm very much looking forward to the panel. So Emad, over to you.
Thank you, David. Very strong insights, and it tells that there is hope in this region. Accountability does matter, and there are improvement on a number of key elements in a number of countries. And today I'm pleased to again welcome 4 panelists with us. So I will start welcoming the panelists in English, but then I will shift into Arabic for the questions. So for interpretations, please make sure that you shift to the English channel. So we have here 4 panelists. I will start with Her Excellency Khzouz. She is historically the youngest member in the Jordanian parliament, which is one of, and she has been one of the great assets for this project and for our engagement in Jordan. We have met several times in Amman while she was actually taking a lead facilitation work in ensuring that civil society is engaged in budget decisions throughout the different hearings with the Jordanian Parliament and the Finance Committee. I'm also joined with Madame Mouna Bengerine. She's the head of Financing and Reform Support Division at the Budget Directorate of the Ministry of Economy and Finance in Morocco. And Madame Mouna and her team, she has been also a great asset for connecting with civil society, working across the different pillars of budget transparency and participation. And there have been great lessons learned from the work and the progress that Morocco has made in this round, which also Madame Mouna will speak to. I'm also pleased to have Hama Ziedan. She's the Operation Director for Amman, Palestine. And I think it's important to have voices of Palestine in such forum. First, because, of course, our full solidarity with the people of Palestine while they are under the attack and under the occupation. But there is still a lot of great work being done by civil society in terms of transparency and budget accountability. So Hama, from her role as the Operation Director at Amman, will tell us more about, in such fragile and challenging context, what civil society can do to advance fiscal transparency. And then last, we have Dr. Ayman, who is the CEO of Shamsiyya for Healthcare Innovation. So Ayman has been working with IPP. Shamsiyya has been working with IPP for the past few years, leading a lot of great work on budget and health, so how we can engage citizens in making decisions around the health budget. And Ayman today will come to highlight some of the great experience that was implemented very recently in cooperation with the FCTE unit, the Unit for Transparency and the Citizen Engagement in the Ministry of Finance, and the UNICEF Egypt in Danish way of government. So I will not take more time. I think we need to hear the stories from our panelists, and I will shift now to Arabic. So we start with سعادة راند Khzouz. So أكيد
We will
سعيدين
start with Her Excellency Ms. Khzouz. We are glad to have you amongst us, and we are happy to have attended a meeting with the Parliament. So my question to you, Ms. Rand, in the French Jordanian, how do you assess the participation of citizens and civil society in accountability and budget oversight and control? And what are the key practices that have reinforced the participation with the Jordan? First of all, thank you very much, Emad. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm very happy to be with you today to take part in this important dialogue during which we speak about transparency and participation in public budget. I always say that the budget is not just laws or money, it's a tool to set the priorities of the state, and it will help to allocate financial means and meet the needs of citizens. This is why the citizen participation and civil society participation is an opportunity to reinforce transparency and accountability and to better allocate financial funds. In Jordan, last year, we had a very good improvement, and this was reflected in the survey. The participation has increased to 14%, and this was due to the economic and political and financial modernization that the Jordanian government is taking by involving and engaging civil society organizations and citizens. Based on my experience with the Jordanian parliament, I want to highlight that the participatory relationship between the parliament, the citizens, and the CSO is very important and is the key national model to build on. CSOs today are reinforcing the citizens' skills and capacity to better understand the general budget, also engaging citizens in all the steps of the budget establishment. In Jordan, we have two correspondences about the budget. The first one is published to define the general framework for the budget and the state priorities in terms of setting the budget. And the second correspondence is published in August. And then the budget is sent to the Parliament of October as per the national constitution. And so engaging citizens and CSOs through participatory dialogue with the Parliament, but to better define priorities more accurately before they are sent to the government, so that the government and the Parliament can take it into account while they prepare. There was several experiences with the Jordanian Parliament, and we had dialogue sessions with them, and their reports they are very important for the Financial Committee, and they are taken into account. Also, now there is an alliance between 23 organizations, and this alliance will have a key role in communicating the needs of citizens in terms of setting policy and setting the general budget. This is why at the Parliament we work on this, and we engage all citizens and CSOs in order to reinforce accountability, transparency, communicating and more accurately communicating the needs of citizens, better listening to the needs of citizens, and also to strengthen trust between citizens and the government institutions and bridge the gap of the lack of trust. We have moved now from a more symbolic participation to a more mature participation. Sure enough, in the coming years, we need to better increase the percentage of citizen participation and CSO participation after the budget is finalized, not only before it is finalized. And this is something that we are working on right now with the Parliament. This year, as a member of the Financial Committee, I have established, I have prepared a note containing recommendations on citizen participation. And I think in the past, the recommendations are usually set after the budget is finalized to be taken into account for the next year. This year, we've done this before so that this can be taken into account when the budget is being developed and drafted. Thank you very much, Ms. Ren. Thank you for respecting the time allocated to you. The practice that we are referring to in relation to working with the CSO Alliance is a very good practice in the Arab world. It's very important to benefit from these experiences. I think there have been great successes in terms of creating a better space for the role of citizens and civil society before and during the preparation of the budget by the Parliament. So thank you very much, Ms. Ren, for your answer. And now we will move to Ms. Mouna from the Moroccan Financial and Economic Ministry. For the 2025 Open Budget Survey, Morocco has made significant progress in terms of transparency and public participation. And there have been a lot of practices that were introduced on public participation, and my colleague has written about them in the regional report. And this reflects that there is a commitment with the Ministry of the Economy and Finance to strengthen transparency. Ms. Mouna Bengerine, could you tell us what are the key changes that the Kingdom of Morocco has introduced in relation to public participation and accountability? May I please ask you to have 5 minutes so that we can leave time for other participants to intervene. Mouna Bengerine. Hello, everyone. All right, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank IBP for having organized this webinar that is a space for exchange and experience sharing. And then I will get to answering your questions. For budget transparency, we have an improved score in Morocco by up to 4 points. So in 2025, we had 51 out of 100. And the improvement is due to several factors. Their signal is disconnecting. Was developed in compliance with the recommendations of the IBP for the open budget of 2023. And so several actions aim to improve the indicators, macroeconomic indicators, the classification of expenditures, forecasts for expenditures for the next budget, in order to better communicate with the public on resources, especially concerning the reform of the health system and the educational sector and promoting employability. Also, we have noted that the deadlines for the development of certain documents have improved after the first reading of the draft, as recommended by IBP
concernant la non-prise en considération des classifications désagrégées des programmes en projets et actions présentés dans le document. Par ailleurs, il faudrait signaler qu'il le rapport
it is important to highlight that the end of year report
qui est régi par le
was presented
et exigé par l'enquête. Une action a été mise en
in
œuvre pour améliorer le rapport
in a period that exceeded that of the survey.
On remarque de l'examinateur de l'IBP puisqu'il présente l'exécution
And
budgétaire
we have taken into account the comment of the IBP examiner.
Donc, pour répondre standard
So, to answer the comment on the periods and the deadlines on the preparation of reports, we have committed to taking the following action.
Au plus tard le 30 juin de l'année N,
First of all, to publish documents no later than the 31st of June and to publish a report destined for citizens as well. So this program has helped us to meet representatives of civil society in order to strengthen communication of budget information to improve budget transparency.
شكرا مدام بنجرين.
Thank you, Ms. Bengerine. Thank you for having clarified that there has been a lot of good practices that the Ministry of Finance has put in place in collaboration with the civil society. I have just arrived from Morocco. I was working with the Ministry of Finance and Economy and the civil society, the Court of Auditors, and I have observed that there is now a very clear mechanism for participation and dialogue between all these stakeholders. So thank you very much for your efforts. We will move now to our colleague, Hama Ziedan. Thank you very much. As I said at the beginning, budget accountability and transparency is not exclusive to countries that are stable. There are also practices that can be taken in countries that are currently facing issues. Also, I would like to reiterate our full support for countries who are now facing challenges and attacks. So, how do you work on transparency and accountability in this context? Ms. Hama, you have 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Emad, and everyone for this opportunity. Thank you to the IBP, who was a partner of over 10 years to us while we work on this. The situation in Palestine is more complicated than other countries on the platform. And this is because we are under occupation that is in full control of all the Palestinian resources and can at any time block the resources to the Palestinian government and seize it, and it can become their property, just like the Palestinian lands under occupation. So, under the crisis and these difficult conditions, transparency and accountability becomes even more important because the people's trust and performance can crash easily because of the underperformance and because of the issues. Under this war of genocide that has been going on for over 3 years in Gaza and the West Bank, and with the occupation's control of the Palestinian resources, I'll give you an idea about the Palestinian budget. Our budget for 2026 is $6.7 billion. Half of it is in deficit before funding, and the Palestinian government is not able to get out of this deficit. The Palestinian resources are essentially taxes from customs. And because these resources come from outside, it is under control by the occupation and it goes straight into the occupation's pockets. more than 2/3 of the Palestinian government's resources are seized by the occupation and have not been given to us for more than 6 years. This has caused great debts up to $14.6 billion for the Palestinian government, for banks. Public servants have not had full salaries for over 5 years. So this context has made us in need of better investing the resources that we have so that we can enable the Palestinian citizens to remain resilient in their country. On the other hand, there is no Palestinian government in Gaza other than a few services that they support, such as health and education. And so all of the assistance that's happening right now there is out of our control and out of our oversight and surveillance. And this is such a burden on the Palestinian society. We've started working on this since 2006, but unfortunately it has been very slow. One of the main problems that we face is that the Palestinian government is not fully convinced that public accountability is a right for citizens. Another issue is that we don't have a legislation that can a legislative, that can communicate these needs to the government. This has made our role as civil society even harder to get into the discussions about the public budget. So we have formed a national team of more than 38 institutions that are working on this in Palestine and in Gaza. Under the recent hostilities, it has become apparent that we are in a real need and dire need to consolidate our support and our efforts so that we can protect our economic rights coming from abroad in order to also pressure the occupation to transfer to us the funds that they have been seizing for many years. And now the government is sure of the lack of trust of citizens in its performance. And so this is why in the last year, more materials have been published than the previous reels. We're still working on this, and the public participation is still very low. So, and as civil society organizations, we don't want superficial participation that just ticks the box. We want participation to be illustrated through decisions that are taken in the public budget. So this has made the Palestinian government to be a bit more open. It's not as open as we wish it to be, but we wish for it to be more open to accountability so that we can support the Palestinian citizens' resilience with very little resources.
يعطيك العافية هما.
Thank you very much, Hama. And as I said at the beginning, despite the conditions, civil society in Palestine is still working with stakeholders, whether that is the Ministry of Finance or the government, also under the current hostility, in the absence of a parliament as well. Your intervention always gives us hope that even under these exceptional circumstances, there's still something to be done. We will now move to the next question with Ayman Sabah, Dr. Ayman Sabah. He is a doctor, as I said at the beginning. Ayman, we've spoken about the regional report that addresses legitimacy. We are talking about legitimacy that reflects the needs of citizens and financial safety and security. Based on your recent experience, with UNICEF and the Ministry of Finance. How do you assess the experience? And I have a complex question, which is how can this experience reinforce the citizens' participation in preparing the budget in Egypt, especially in relation to health services? You've got 5 minutes. Thank you very much. I am honored to be here with you today and speak about practical experiences. Our work with the Ministry of Finance has been very beneficial. We have heard about this program for a while, and this has been an opportunity for us to see the team of Shamsiya, led by my colleague Reem. We wanted to work on this in a way that tests the model's ability to be implemented on the ground, and this was the key challenge for this project. My assessment for the experience is that it is quite important. It had a direct impact not only on the lives of citizens and their ability to access information and resources related to the budget and health in an effective way, but it's also enabled them to have a voice and to communicate their needs to officials at the local level. Even though the idea of participation was relatively new to a lot of people working in this context. So I think this was a very, very important experience that has had a direct impact. This is a very important opportunity as well to talk in transparency and honesty. And I want to say that this model, led by the team of the Transparency Unit at the Ministry of Finance, can only be described as a canvas to drawn that has great potential, and you can draw on it very effective and impactful things. But at the end of the day, it remains an empty canvas. And according to the organization or the individual, depending on who uses it, whether that's an individual or an institution, this canvas can either be very pretty or very ugly. And this is the danger. The initiative and the team of the Ministry of Finance have had a breakthrough, in my opinion. And the result of the OBS in Egypt was very affected by this. So, in light of the current circumstances, to claim that we are going to enable youth and stakeholders to have a direct impact on this and their access to budget information and follow it up and have accountability is very difficult. And had it not been for the unit supported by UNICEF, who have taken it upon themselves to lead on this, had it not been for this, we wouldn't have had this opportunity. However, opportunity alone is insufficient. What's important is how to use this opportunity in order to have a true impact that affects people, not something symbolic or something that just looks nice on the report. And this was the key challenge. I think that the help with UNICEF has opened the floor to work further on this experience throughout the country, and it has made it clear that the implementing entities have a role in supporting these models, and it should be to give the blank canvas and to set frameworks, regulations, and support by providing networks, relations, and access for decision makers at the local level or the national level. But it shouldn't be to draw on the canvas. And so the state should not be the one doing this. It should be the one giving the civil society the opportunity and supporting it. Watching it from afar, from a distance, and facilitating its work. Is the challenge the guarantee that this model can be used and can be replicated across the country. And we have had a golden opportunity, and we've seen this play out in action. And the most important lessons, and these have been the most important lessons for us in this experience. Thank you. As you've explained, this has been a pilot model, and implementing it in other districts is a priority in order to ensure sustainability and the buy-in of this project on a wider scale. This is in order to reinforce public participation in budgeting. As you have explained, the steps that have been taken by the Transparency Unit with the Ministry of Finance have improved participation in the open budget survey compared to previous rounds. And we need to streamline this experience to other districts. Thank you very much. I'm trying to assess if the time enables us to receive questions from participants, because unfortunately Ms. Rand has had to leave because she has other commitments, and unfortunately we can't take more questions about Jordan. But as I explained earlier, this is a very important dialogue that will continue and carry on. We will have other events on the national level in Jordan, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Lebanon, Palestine. If the time permits, I'm going to have a look at the questions from participants, and I will quickly address Hama. Can you quickly tell us, under the current conditions that inhibit accountability on budget, what practical measures in Palestine can be implemented in order to address this? Please answer quickly. First of all, reinforcing transparency by the Palestinian government and by the donors. Setting our priorities, and the first important priority is reinforcing resilience, because the conditions are very difficult right now. So transparency is the priority. I can see that there are notes in the questions. It's not English or Arabic. I'll take them, I'll try to translate them and see what it says. Thank you, Hama. We have a lot of questions, unfortunately very little time. We will try to address these questions. If anyone can answer the question in the chat, that would be great. Also, I will quickly address Ms. Mouna. And the question is about Morocco's quality change. Sorry, about the change in Morocco's score on participation from 6 to 24. Madam Ms. Mouna, in 1 minute, can you tell us what steps the Moroccan government has taken in order to improve public budget participation? In 1 minute, please.
Donc, comme vous l'avez bien signalé, il y avait déjà la plateforme de
as we said,
Mais il faut dire qu'il fallait institutionnaliser et pérenniser la participation
important to
citoyenne.
institutionalize citizen participation. And so the ministry has planned to have in place a platform for open budgeting. Steps were taken, such as a survey on the open budget, and this citizen survey aimed to identify the needs of citizens. A survey was established and communicated online.
Les professeurs universitaires, les étudiants, les indépendants, les salariés et les fonctionnaires. Il y a eu une participation de 60%.
A participation of 60%, and several recommendations were drawn from this, such as the creation of an interactive space that enables meaningful citizen participation. Also, multilingualism in order to respond to the diversity, linguistic diversity, and also taking into account the inclusion of a glossary. Also, we organized awareness-raising workshops with rural citizens and with the social categories that are underrepresented. And the second step was a validation workshop or a consensus workshop between civil society representatives, journalists, content creators, etc. This was supported by the World Bank, and then it was followed by a recommendation workshop.
Comme le déploiement de stratégies actives sur les réseaux sociaux adaptés.
We have drawn out several recommendations from it.
Direction de budget du ministère de l'Économie et des Finances envisage.
In addition to the open budget platform, the ministry has developed a budget lab project in collaboration with GIZ, and we developed a budget game and a communication tool. And we have also referred to the strategic framework of public finance.
Mettre en place un deuxième plan d'action.
And now we want to have in place an action plan on budget transparency in order to include all the lessons learned from all the previous experiences to improve budget transparency and public participation.
Je pense que j'ai pas débordé sur 1 minute.
I hope that I haven't exceeded 1 minute.
شكرا مدام
Thank
Bengerine.
you very much, Ms. Bengerine. I think that we are going to need to move on to closing remarks.
I need to thank all the panelists. I think what the panelists are saying, it tells that there is a story of a change. There are challenges, but there is hope. And as we are naming this webinar, that under pressure, we're still able to advance fiscal governance and budget transparency in this region. And thanks to all our interlocutors and partners from civil society, governments, parliament, and the Supreme Audit Institutes. So just in conscious of time, I have to shift for my colleague David Robbins for the closing remarks. And thank you, everyone. We'll try to answer the questions as much as we can and follow with the people who posed the question in case it has not been answered in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Emad. And thank you to our great panelists, Rand, Mouna, Hama, Ayman. We're really grateful for your contributions today, and even more so for the work that you do every day to build budget systems that serve people. The progress we've discussed wouldn't be possible without people like you. And big thank you to Pablo and the European Commission whose support, alongside that, the UK FCDO, has made this work possible. Investment in budget accountability in the region reflects exactly the kind of joint effort between development partners, civil society, oversight institutions, and governments that produces real durable change. And of course, I also want to thank everyone who joined us today from across the region and beyond. The questions and engagement we've seen reflect a community that really takes this work seriously. And finally, a big special thanks to our interpreters who've made today's discussion possible across 3 languages. And now, if you'll permit me just a final thought. The OBS 2025 tells us really something hopeful about this region. Despite the pressures it's under, budget accountability is moving in the right direction. Transparency is improving, participation showing real gains in places like Jordan and Morocco, and oversight has rebounded. These gains are happening across the budget cycle, not just in one moment. What we heard today from our panelists gives that data its meaning. The score change for Jordan isn't just a number, it's parliament opening doors that were previously closed. Morocco's portal isn't just a website, it's a structured commitment to give citizens a voice in budget decisions. The work in Egypt isn't just a pilot, it's a model for what participatory budgeting can look like when ministries, partners, and communities work together. And Emad's work in Palestine is a reminder that the case for budget accountability is often strongest precisely where conditions are the hardest. Across all of this, one theme is really clear. Progress in the region is being driven by people who refuse to accept that public budgets should be opaque, exclusive, or unaccountable. Civil society and reformers working inside and outside government are doing the patient work of building budget systems that can actually deliver, that can earn legitimacy by showing up for citizens in ways that matter. There's still real work ahead of us, carrying transparency through the full budget cycle, not just at proposal, building the participatory practices that are working at the local and national levels and institutionalizing them, expanding accountability into those harder spaces, debt, public investment, fiscal risk, and strengthening the links between governments, oversight institutions, and civil society, because that's where information becomes accountability, and accountability becomes trust. IBP is committed to continuing this work alongside our civil society partners across the region, and to deepening engagement with governments, parliaments, and other institutions who are pushing in the same direction. The gains we've shared today should be a starting point, not a destination. And we're going to keep working with you to take them further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Before we close, just want to mention that the version of the Arabic version, French, and English version of the regional report is now allowed, or is now available on our website, and you can find it in the chat. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for your timing. And we'll continue to engage with everyone in the future, with the government, with our partner from civil society, Supreme Audit Institute, and Parliament, to continue and take this opportunity further. So thank you, everyone, and till we meet again. Thank you.